Oh boy, look at
Yeah.
this. We've got the ADAS panel coming up. We have some real firepower in this group today. We got Doug Kelly, who's been in the automotive technology business for over 35 years as CEO at one point of Repairify Inc., the makers of Aztec, which everybody knows about, with an incredible track record of industry success. Doug is now a strategic advisor in the ADAS calibration sector, and we are damn lucky to have him here today, folks. Doug Kelly. Frank Turlip is joining us. If you don't know who this man is, you've been living under a rock, my friend. This man is so smart, his brain has left no room for hair to grow.
Yes.
Now the Vice President of ADAS Solutions for Opus IBS, the original disruptor, and my great friend, Frank Turlip. And then we have Jerry Cathcart. Jerry and his company, ADAS Solutions USA, has become a trusted friend to many of our clients in the past couple years by offering very effective and practical solutions for those wanting to get into the ADAS business. Give it up for Jerry Cathcart.
Woo! Welcome, gentlemen.
This is our panel. Good looking bunch here.
Hey, Dave, I gotta say, thanks for making me look younger with the picture, bud. Thank you.
Photoshop. It took hours, but we made it happen.
I love it. I love it. I've been looking forward to our panels are going pretty good, Ryan.
I'm enjoying this. This is totally new for us, guys. So thanks for joining us, helping us through this.
As somebody that's been on a million panels, how are we doing, Frank?
I think you guys are doing an awesome job. Awesome job.
All right. Well, let's start with
a $10 bill for you later, Frank. Thanks for that compliment.
Let's start off with a really stupid question. You know, the question so dumb only I could come up with it. And that where the hell's ADAS going? Right? Are cars going to be able to self-calibrate? I mean, if these cars are so freaking smart and we got all this AI stuff, how come they're not calibrating themselves? Where's ADAS going? Let's start with Frank, since we picked on him first.
I'll just use three comments: more sensors, more sensor fusion, and more complexity. And I'll let Doug and Jerry pick it up from there.
All right, Doug.
Yes. By the way, great job, guys. I just love what you do, and I love being a part of it. And some of these previous speakers are just awesome.
Yeah.
You know, relative to where it's going and do they, can they self-calibrate? So the good news on a positivity front is today's cars can self-calibrate and actually do real-time in traffic. The question is, when they're manufactured, or in this case, remanufactured as part of a collision, should they be dynamically or self-calibrating? And the answer is no. And the reason for that is, Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, these companies today with some of the most advanced technology on today's cars are doing static calibrations in the factory. So when you birth a car, it has to know where to look. And that technology you put on it, those sensors, those modules, all have to be told where to look. Once they're told where to look, they can keep going back to that reference point as they're driving. But it's critical to understand that, when it's first born and when it's, repaired in an accident, you should really actually, tell the car where to look before you just put it into traffic.
Kind of still needs a human being involved, huh? Jerry, what do you think?
Doug hit the nail right on the head. Best way to put it, as these vehicles, the more sensors that come along. I've done a lot of work with Tesla and Rivian, as most of you know, and Tesla's come to the realization that they cannot produce a vehicle without having a static calibration. Problem is they released them out into the repair world and said, oh no, they're all dynamic. Well, now they're backtracking big time. 2024 and 2025, you'll see that really advance. Same thing with Rivian. They've made a decision that they're going full boat on the rest of these, including their long range cameras that we're getting to calibrate as we go through these processes. So it's getting bigger and better every month and every year as we move forward.
Very cool. Doug, I actually want to pick on you for a quick second. I want to just, and for those of you who don't know Doug Kelly, what a great guy. He's like a mentor to a lot of us, and I lean on him for a lot of expert advice, as we do on all these folks on this panel, Frank and Jerry as well. But I want to understand for a second, Doug, can you talk to us about some of the trends, the tools, the technology that's being used for calibrations? What can we expect to change there? What's coming in the future?
Well, so the good news is there's going to be more automation. When I go back to my days at Aztec or Repairify, I was astonished at the variety of ways that car companies were recommending we calibrate cars in the aftermarket. And so I got into a factory, and that's where I learned about Burke Porter, the company I'm with. And at the factory, it's done in 90 seconds, and it's robotic, and the cars are being centered automatically. And so you're going to see a lot more automation come into play. And automation will speak to, improved accuracy and speed. And those two things will play a big role going forward. You're going to see a greater focus on documentation, right? I know some companies are doing a good job, but you're going to see more and more of that going forward. And over the air communication, you're going to see more and more of that. So we'll still have diagnostic scan tools, but you're going to see more communication being done, over the air versus the way it's been done previously.
So as an example, that big recall that Tesla had, they did an over-the-air update. It was like the biggest recall ever. They did an over-the-air update, and it was like not a big deal at all, right?
Another example was Nissan Rogues had this phantom braking problem with AEB, and so they did an update with that one as well over the air. And it was the algorithm, right? It was too restrictive, and so they loosened it up a little bit. But yeah, so you're going to see more and more of that stuff done, over the air.
Very cool.
Wow.
There is one last piece. I'm sorry to miss this, which is you're going to see a greater emphasis on verification. So as vehicles get into that level 3 and above, outside of collision, you're going to see, government agencies looking at, if these things really are going to be, autonomous in some respect, you're going to see a need for reinspection. So that's going to lead to verification. And that's a whole other subject that we can talk about at a later date.
Yeah, and Doug, let me piggyback on that. I meant someone said earlier as a commenter about licensing. I truly believe because of the way cars are going to connect to other cars are going to connect to infrastructure. You're going to have licensing and certification and verification in this industry. There's not going to be an option. The government's going to jump in, or we're going to have to do it ahead of the government.
Yeah, these safety systems, Frank, are too critical. I mean, you know that, right? Like
100%.
These aren't orange blinking lights anymore. These things control your braking, steering, and acceleration. So the same functions we perform as drivers are now being taken over by the car and technology. So to Frank's point, you're not just going to be able to say, yeah, I think I did a good job.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, Frank, Frank Turlip came out to our event in Nashville a couple years ago and talked to everybody about the opportunities in the ADAS business. And almost immediately, half of our mastermind members went out and opened up ADAS businesses, and the reports have been pretty good, Frank. So talk about the business side of the ADAS business. Tell us, where do you think the opportunities are headed, and what you're seeing out there for body shops to maybe you open up a separate business, or what's that look like?
Well, let me just throw a couple numbers out. So 2023, there were 15.6 million vehicles sold. New vehicles sold, okay, or delivered, which means about 98% of those included some type of ADAS AEB technology, right? So that's one number. There's another statistic out there that in the windshield world, it's $1 billion calibration business already, all right? And then you look at our industry, and 80% of the facilities don't have the space, the proper lighting, the proper design. So you add all those three up, it's a huge opportunity if you do it right. Okay. And that's, again, you're going to hear me say this until I go, till I'm in my grave. I mean, you've got people out there doing targets in the parking lots. You can't do that.
Not on windy days.
You can't do it at all. Okay.
Oh, wow, right. That was good.
But no, I mean, truly, you're gonna see it's gonna be a $2 billion business, $3 billion business. Next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be $6 or $7 or $8 billion. Now remember, our collision industry is about 40 billion, right?
Yeah.
So you start to look at that number, it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, we're starting to see some private equity getting into this space already too.
Oh, Dave, I've talked to multiple organizations that are looking, how do I get into the business? How do I get into the business? So yeah.
Well, why don't we unpack that with Jerry? Jerry, talk to us about what kind of equipment is needed today to perform these kind of calibrations, and what do you consider as maybe a proper, if you will, calibration as opposed to an improper one?
You know, it's interesting. I've been fortunate enough to research most of the manufacturers out there, from Bosch and TruePoint. I've owned most of the systems from Autel and the OE stuff, building our own targets, building our own setups and that kind of stuff. And it's ever evolving. And when I say ever evolving, most of these manufacturers each year are coming out with a new system, new design, new software that's needed, or new targets. And so as we work through that, there's not a one fits all. Literally, I've used almost every single system out there. We've owned them. Like I said, we have 9 calibration centers right now, and they're fitted with the TruePoint system and the Autel system. I call the TruePoint, and I hate my guts for calling it this, I call it a $57,000 paperweight. It utilizes itself very well for the Rivian systems and their OEM agreements. Anything outside of that, it's got almost zero value, unfortunately, because the way that it's designed. Once you get into the Autel, it's user friendly. Same thing with launch. Both of those systems are almost mirror each other. But as we continue to grow, we continue to evaluate and evolve and add more equipment. We've got another 5 locations opening up over the next 120 days, and starting out with the IA 900s, putting the True Points in for our Rivian friends and Lucid friends to be able to allow us to do those calibrations and whatnot. There is not one system that fits all. We do utilize OEM software for every calibration. We start out at the beginning with an Autel pre-scan and then an Autel post-scan with most manufacturers. When I say that, there are some certain manufacturers that have not allowed Autel, Launch, Bosch, any of them access to their software. So,
yeah, there's a lot of debate going on in the industry a little bit about which solutions are considered proper and which solutions are not. And I don't really want to get into a huge political discussion, but I do want to open it up to you guys about, you know, do you feel like most vehicles are being properly calibrated? I'm hearing that even the dealers aren't doing it right? And what do you consider, in your opinion, is a proper calibration as opposed to one that is considered improper?
Let's start with the end in mind on that one.
Yeah.
If I have a vehicle that's been repaired and calibrated, and I take the vehicle on the road and the systems operate as the OEMs expect them to operate, then that vehicle's calibrated correctly. Okay. The only way, in my opinion, that you can verify that the vehicle's been calibrated correctly is to make sure the systems operate the way they're supposed to. I mean, there's no shortcut. I mean, there's no shortcut. And to answer the first question, a vast majority, over 50% of the vehicles that should be getting calibrations are not.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that go to YouTube to figure out how to shortcut all the systems, and you know, that certainly isn't proper. But it so you got to verify it. How do you verify it, Frank?
Well, you got to drive the car. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, I don't care, and we've all experienced this. I know Doug and Jerry has. I don't care if my calibration system tells me that it's calibrated. That doesn't mean it's working right. It's got to. You got to test it on the road.
Doug?
we have 17 out of 100 that, and this is Jerry, I apologize for interrupting. We have 17 out of 100 vehicles that fail the initial road test after all the calibrations have been done. And we watch that very
17 out of what?
17 out of 100 vehicles that we do fail on the road test. And when I say fail, there's something, it's not throwing the proper radio frequency from the vehicle. It's not allowing it to retrieve it properly. It's not allowing lane keep assist. And we go back in and we get heavily involved in those. And I know Frank's company, we utilize them. We utilize different manufacturers to dial into the vehicle, because if I have an OEM piece of software that says, hey, this lane keep assist is dialed in perfectly, and I take it down the road and all of a sudden I'm in head-on traffic, I call it the knucklehead effect, because we have to go out and act like knuckleheads to make sure this stuff is responding as designed.
Crazy. Doug, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the good news, guys, is new entrants are upping the game, right? So the new entrants are coming in, they're creating controlled environments, they're adding an alignment capability, which that gets overlooked a lot of times. But if the car's not aligned correctly and you're doing calibrations, that's a whole nother set of worms. Frank mentioned the post-calibration test, the documentation's improving. But yeah, are we where we need to be as an industry? We're nowhere close to that. I can tell you on the verification front, Frank's absolutely right. The car has to be driven. The challenge we have is, if you take GM Super Cruise, for instance, it's geofenced, right? So that system only works on designated roadways.
Oh, wow.
So we're actually today, as our company, we're developing a controlled environment where we can do ADAS verification, where you can have the car, on a treadmill, and you introduce, different features, whether it's a deer or a car or whatever it is, or a moving screen, and you can actually in real time test those systems. Because the thing that I worry about most is putting a technician in a car that's been repaired without knowing if in fact those systems are going to work. And you say, hey, go try the AEB, right? I mean, you're risking harm to the driver, you're risking potential damage to the car. So we're working on a solution to basically allow, folks to do that in a more controlled way.
Cars on treadmills. How about that?
Fascinating. So we've got 4 minutes left, guys, and I really want to get your opinion, because there's a lot of people on this call that if they're not already entering the ADAS business, they're probably going to want to, right? How do we start? How do we determine how far to go into this ADAS business? Are there certain makes and models we should specialize in? Should we try to do all of them? Where do we start if I'm an independent collision repair shop wanting to get into the ADAS business? Let's start with Doug.
I was going to ask you first, because I think the first step's to get educated, right? It's not about deciding makes and models. It's understanding what's required. iCar is now getting into the education front with ADAS. SCA is doing the same. We got the Ford certification piece now. If you want to do Ford, you have to be certified. So I would highly recommend people become educated on the subject before they get attracted to the dollars. And the reason for that is I see ADAS calibration moving into its own profession, right? Where technicians are specially trained and equipped to do this job. It's not about, anybody can do it. I was on a panel at Siemens, and one company said, anybody can do this. You don't need any training. And I just thought, this is the most irresponsible thing I've ever heard. So education.
At least our panel's better than theirs, Ryan.
I'll stop there, but education, that's key to me.
Yeah. Who wants to go next, Jerry or Frank?
Well, I mean,
Education.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Well, I think first of all, the first step is, do you want to be in the business or not? Right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's a decision. And then if you make that decision, you want to get into it. Doug and Jerry just talked about education. And then you start to do what any business would do. What's the market plan? What's the market opportunity? So you're going to go through that same business planning opportunity. But yeah, you got to understand what you're going to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Jerry,
mean, sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
Jerry's got several of these locations. How do you determine when and where to open up a new center?
The education piece of it is astronomical. Frank and I've talked about it so many times. Doug, you hit the nail right on the head. We make sure wherever we're going into, we check the populace of body shops. And when I say that, we drop a pin and say, all right, and we go through and we verify how many shops are within a 3-mile radius, 5-mile radius, 12-mile radius of the shop, figure out drive times, understand the impact. Then the education side of it, and I'm going to say this very openly, are the shops open to be educated on how these are supposed to be done? We go in and we test the floors, and we'll look at 50 locations before we rent a location or buy a location, because we need to make sure the floors are in line. So there's so much involved with going through it. Frank put an amazing program together. If anybody can, Frank, I don't know if you still publish that or not, on how to open up a calibration center. We literally, if you take his information and you have somewhat of a business savviness, you can take that and you can open up a calibration center. I don't want more competition, but I do want people being educated. And I tell everybody, I'll bring anybody along for the ride if they want to learn.
Wow.
So cool.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts before we run out of time? We got 1 minute left, guys. Any final pieces of advice?
I'll say what I've said for the last 4 years. Biggest opportunity our industry has seen in the last 25 years. But let's do it right.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. This is so much fun. I mean, we could have gone on this probably for hours. So thank you for coming, sharing your wisdom with everybody. We truly appreciate it.
Frank, Doug, Jerry, big round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.